Buenas tardes, good afternoon. Welcome to ¿Qué pasa, Mujer? Bienvenidos a ¿Qué pasa, Mujer? Otro domingo a las 4 de la tarde. So we're here every Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Estamos aquí a las 4 de la tarde todos los domingos, hora de Nueva York. So hoy tenemos nuestras chicas, nuestras mujeres, Maddie y Nikki. We could go ahead and bring them on. We won't take too long to because we haven't seen you guys. Hi, Maddie.
Hello, mujeres.
Buenas tardes. The team is back.
Yeah, we're back. Good. ¿Cómo has estado, Nikki? Dinos un poquito de cómo tú estás en el pasado. Dinos cómo están las cosas allá.
El pasado está bien. Ha sido un poco caótica esta semana, but we're good. We're good. We rearranged some things in the house. I think just because we were so eager to settle in when we moved here, but like things didn't feel quite right. So I rearranged my office, which feels much better. It flows. It feels more open. I still got to fix a few things, but overall feel really happy about that and rearrange some other stuff around the house. Life's been good. Just kind of getting adjusted to a new schedule. They put my husband in a whole new job, which is a good thing, but it's also a new adjustment to a lot more demand. So we feel like we've moved again. But we are here, and we are just thankful to be here in beautiful Hawaii. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of.
Are those new frames? I don't think I've seen the pink ones before.
See, they are. Ta-da!
I love it. Okay, what about you, Maddie? What's going on in your world?
I feel like I haven't seen you guys in forever. It's been a couple of weeks, so a lot of things going on. But basically, we had to move one boy out of an apartment, then move the other one back into school, and so thankfully everybody is all the pieces are back into place, at least for 1 year. So that's kind of how I feel. Okay, this year we're good, so we just got to make it to the end of the year. Yeah, everybody's well. My daughter is doing okay. Baby is beautiful. She is about to be 6 months already. I can't believe it. But she's eating food. So it's nice, whipping stuff up for her and kind of see how she likes it. And of course she'll make a face, but then she'll keep opening her mouth. So, it's wonderful. She eats a lot. She's moving. She's trying to crawl right now. So, it's funny because she'll get in crawling position, and then she'll put her legs straight, but then she doesn't know how to straighten her arms to kind of pull herself up. So it's just the butt in the air, and then she puts her head on the floor, and then she tries to push, but you can't move if your head is on the floor. So, and she gets frustrated, and then she flips over, and then until she wants to try it again. So it is, So yeah, she's gorgeous. She smiles at everything. You say hi and she smiles. So, she's a happy baby. Work has been crazy. They have me working out of another office for the past, I've been there for 2 months, and I have to stay there for another month and a half. So it's in another city. So it's not too far from home, but there is travel. So I am facing traffic now in the mornings, which I didn't before. So that's a little bit different. And then of course it's hard because people don't know me, in that area. You walk in there, and every time you go to a new location, they're like, "Oh, so you're new here?" So it's kind of. So it's, a lot of that to getting adjusted. And then now finally, when people are getting kind of used to seeing your face in there, it's like, oops, I'm leaving next week, so it's one of those. But, hanging in there, helping however I can, and just trying to keep moving forward. Also, another thing that I did I've been doing things for myself. I know, Viviana, you've been big about talking about doing little things for yourself. So the first thing, I changed my hairstyle. I cut my hair, so I did a big chop.
So it's really short and it's curly, ¿verdad?
I haven't had it curly yet, but yes, I figure it's gonna be like a little fro when it's curly. So yeah.
It's gonna look nice.
It
So
looks super
I'm
cute.
gonna be cutting mine soon too. I am. I already thought about it.
Ooh.
yeah, so I just, I was like, okay, I need something different. So I went and chopped my hair. I don't know. I think for girls, it's every time you talk about change, it's like, okay, the first thing we think about is our hair. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so I did that. But what I wanted to share is that, again, going through a lot of things in life, sometimes you can feel very overwhelmed. And I put myself in therapy, which I had not been in therapy since I was 17 years old. So it's been a long time, and it was like a big fight with myself because it's like I know I need this, but I don't want to, and it's like maybe I don't need it as much, but then maybe I do need it. So it was one of those things, and I did it, and I'm happy I did, and I feel much better about it now. So yeah.
I think that's great, especially because if you know that this is something that you desire to do, and I think it's good for maintenance, right? For
Mhm.
prevention of things to come up, and as you go through it, you're gonna see things that maybe it wasn't prevention; it was already there, and you've been needing the therapy.
Mhm.
And I think you go through phases of, like you look forward to meeting every week or every 2 weeks or whatever. And then sometimes you're like, you know what, like I don't need a session this week, like I'm good, and then you have the liberty to make those adjustments as you see fit. But I think it's great that you're doing that, Maddie, because out of, if anything, for maintenance reasons. I
Yeah.
think it's great.
Yeah. And Maddie, thank you so much for sharing that too. I completely agree with Viviana. I think it's so healthy to be able to do that and to just, I think it helps you get a fresh perspective on things sometimes that we might not notice that we're doing. And it helps kind of raise your awareness of, oh, okay, this is a habit that I can do these things to kind of help me get out of it. So I think on the hindsight, you'll look back 6 months from now, you'll see those changes that it's going to help you. And it's also going to be validating. They're like, oh, okay, this is okay that I'm feeling like this. So I love that you shared that with us and our audience.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Mhm.
Kudos to you. Yeah, I have a friend. She's been married for I don't know, maybe like 15 years or a little bit more. And her husband and her always go to like a monthly therapy session just for maintenance of their marriage. And I saw her a couple of like 2, 3 weeks ago. She was like, "Man," she's like, "We stopped going." I'm like, "Well, you need to start going because I talk about you all the time to my friends and tell them how you guys do maintenance um, counseling sessions, but they had stopped. So she's like, but you know what? We need to like start doing it again. It's just good for prevention. I think it's awesome. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about, well, for me, I've been doing some stuff too.
No,
Like,
Vivian, how was your week?
yeah, yeah, I had to check myself. Um, just busy, kids went back to school, so school's back in session. So it's just been busy with that aspect of it. I'm really enjoying that my mom has a like an actual job with like another company besides mine. She's really thriving in it, and I love that she's busy, but at the same time it has put like extra responsibilities on my table as well, with my grandmother and just with her and her job as well. But we've been able to collaborate. 'Cause I don't know if I've mentioned it here, but I'm the director for a nonprofit organization called the Hispanic Resource Center. And so her organization and my organization are going to become partners. So out of the relationship, out of her working there, and it started off being a summer internship, paid internship. But because they loved her and she loved the job, they hired her permanently. So it's been really good. And it's like a wraparound, because it's a Peninsula Agency on Aging. And so my mom has been able to learn so many resources that are available for herself and for my grandmother, and then sharing it with the community as well. So she's like the Hispanic coordinator for the agency. So that has been like super nice. Um, But my children are doing good. I actually just left a basketball event for my youngest son. So we live really close to Boo Williams. So Boo Williams is like big time in basketball. The just high school competition. They have these regional games and stuff like that. So people from other states come here to compete. Like that's how big it is. I remember a couple of years ago when they put the Boo Williams complex, they started to build a lot of hotels in the area because whenever there's tournaments at Boo Williams, people come from everywhere. So people have to stay in hotels. So it's pretty big. And so my son got invited. It was like an invite only kind of workout. And he's, with other eighth graders. And I would say he's like one of the top 5 for sure. So that was exciting. Yeah. So I'm like, we're going to the NBA. So we'll see. In eighth grade.
That's so awesome.
Yeah,
I didn't realize I was on mute.
yeah. And then my oldest son, he's just, living his best life. He'll be 20 soon. And he's great. He's been doing a good job so far in reference to, just staying out of trouble, doing what he's supposed to be doing financially, relationships, family relationships, and romantic relationships. So it's been great so far. In reference to me, I've been doing a little bit better in reference to just being more health conscious. And sometimes it's the little things, Maddie, right? Like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I went to New Jersey for some stuff that I have going on in the house over there. So I had a lot of free time. So my sons and I went to a really nice mall there. So I got me some new makeup. And so it wasn't an expected thing to do, but I was able to get some just kind of like refresh my makeup stuff. So that was something that I kind of did for me. And I don't wear makeup on a daily basis, but when I do put it on, I love it. Like it just gives me that fresh look. And then I bought me a little bit of blush, as you can see, so that's what I added to my personal this month.
I love it. It looks like natural, like you have that natural blush, like the sun-kissed one. Te quedó bien bonito.
Yep. So that's that's what I've been working on. But last week, when you guys left me alone to do the show by myself, we talked about our just touching bases with our goals because we only have 4 months left to 2024, and then it'll be 2025. So we talked about all of that. So the only missing piece, Maddie, was the financial goals. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that because then we'll move on to another topic. But I wanted you to talk a little bit about, we're here. There's only 4 months left. How can we play catch up maybe a little bit, or how can we adjust things?
So I think, what we usually don't do is a temperature check, just like you're asking us to do right now. So I think that's kind of like the start, because we're really good about at the beginning of the year setting goals, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm going to do, and I do this and I do that, but then we don't check on ourselves. We don't check on our progress. We don't check to see what's working and what's not, because sometimes you kind of put a goal for yourself and you say, I can afford $100 a month to put in a savings account, but then you may be going through a phase where, $100 may be too much and you might need to lower that amount, so we need to kind of be able to be flexible with ourselves, give ourselves grace and be able to make those adjustments. And at the same token, okay, I'm doing 100. I think I could do 150, do that too. So I think it's always nice to have that temperature check at least once or twice a year so that we can make the necessary adjustments, when it comes to savings. Same thing when it comes to paying down debt. So, again, sit down with the goals that you set and then kind of check them to make sure that to see what's working and what's not and what changes you need to make. That's the best thing that I can say. I know things happen, life happens, and sometimes, there's things that you don't anticipate will happen. And if they happen, what do you do and how do you handle them? And we have to know that, because the thing is, sometimes, we say ourselves, I'm going to do a budget and I'm going to try to stick to my budget. But, there's certain things that you might not budget for that arrives and you're like, "Ugh, there goes my budget. It just threw off my budget." So it's kind of, a budget is just a guideline. Your plans, your goals, they're just guidelines, So nothing in life is going to be set in stone, and we have to learn to be able to kind of adjust. So the best thing that I could say is, kind of try to, I say the same thing with my clients all the time. Everybody that goes into the bank, I tell people all the time, whenever we call somebody on the phone, every year, at least once a year, get in the habit of calling the bank and kind of checking, making sure, or if somebody from the bank calls you, can you check my accounts and make sure I'm still in the right accounts? Is everything the way that it's supposed to be working? Do you guys have anything new, anything that has changed, anything else that I can take advantage of? And especially if you've been with your bank for a very long time. So I mean, it could work both ways if you've been with the bank for a very long time, because sometimes, we get used to, we get comfortable with what we have, with what we do. And if there's one thing that is certain, is that everything is constantly changing. So rules and regulations and laws and everything is constantly changing, and we need to educate ourselves, because you may have an account that you've had for 10 years, and they might have something else that's new, that's better, or that's more appropriate for what your needs may be, So, but if you don't know, you don't know. So again, we have to educate ourselves, ask questions, what's new? Sometimes, people are like, like, I mean, it surprises me whenever I get a client that wants to know, that is asking me questions. But it's my job that if I have somebody in front of me, be like, okay, you have an old account, this is the new account, this is how they're the same, this is how they're different. Do you think this one works better or this one? So, that is always important. So check on yourselves. Again, your debt, same thing, check how much, you owe. Focus. I think we talked about focusing on the best way to pay down debt, or one of the strategies out there to pay down your debt, is to concentrate in your smallest bill, pay that off so that you can go to the next one, and so on and so forth, and you can focus on those. That's a great way of doing it, not only because you pay it and you can concentrate on the next one, take that payment that you were doing on the little one and double it up and put it on the next bill, but also because I think as human beings, when we accomplish something, we are proud, and it kind of pushes you to do more. So if you pay down one, you're like, yes, I did it, I paid one down, so let me focus on the next one. It kind of gives you more motivation to focus on the next one. So temperature check on your finances, check on your debt, see if the strategy that you currently have is working, and make the necessary adjustments.
How often should we do the temperature check?
I would probably say it depends on what your goals are. If you have short-term goals and long-term goals. So we're talking about, when we started talking about this today, we were talking about like the goals that we set for the year. So those are your short-term goals. So I will probably say for anything, like if you give yourself a year, check at least twice. At least twice, and especially when you're feeling overwhelmed, because I think sometimes when we feel overwhelmed, we just tend to ignore everything and we lose focus. So maybe, when you feel overwhelmed, kind of go over your stuff and be like, okay, is this really working for me, or it's not? I don't want to completely delete it, but how can I adjust it so that I'm still working towards something? Because I think that's the first thing we do when we feel like something is not working. We don't think about adjusting. We think about, maybe this is not for me, so let me exit and let me do something else. No, let me adjust it and let me see if it will work in another way. So don't give up on yourself, kind of, just refocus is what I would say.
Thank you for that good advice.
I hopefully I can speak without being interrupted by this sneeze that I can't get out. But I love what you said, Maddie, about the temperature check. I think just because naming something makes it more memorable to me, so that way I can keep track. I think recently too, where I can see the temperature check being really helpful is knowing when you have big expenses coming up. So for me, like in terms of business side, summer was it last month, last month was where I had a lot of my business subscriptions due, and it ended up being a high expense month. And because I really needed to take things slow to just for my mental health and just slow things down, I had more expenses than income at that time, which had been the first time in many years that that had happened. So I caught myself kind of feeling off guard and apprehensive. And so, my husband and I were talking about, okay, this is something that I knew was coming up. It's a situation you kind of reel it back and then you start to plan. I knew I had the budget for it, but it's that being aware of, okay, this is going to be coming up as you kind of do these temperature checks. And then you can kind of plan ahead for it and mitigate. At least for me, it was more about mitigating the emotions that came out of it, where more expenses, less income at that time. It hadn't happened in a really long time, but knowing, okay, here's the situation and here's how it's just temporary and it's for the investment. So I think reframing again too was, where is this expense coming from? Is it for unnecessary things, or is it really for something that you really needed, an investment of some sort? So that kind of helped me. But I love how you said that temperature check. It just really sticks with me because I think that hacerlo más frecuentemente te ayuda a estar como más presente y ya tener la precaución. Okay, this is going to be happening. I know what to plan for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could do that with multiple things. Like we had talked about before, Nick, that we talked about the SWOT analysis, right? So we could do the SWOT analysis for not just our business, but our personal life as well. I recently went to like a women's workshop, and they were talking about like pillars of your heart, right? And how you can evaluate the pillars of your heart. So then she said at the end, she said, once you identify them, whether they're good or bad, right? Whether it's fear or security or insecurity, then you determine if you need to demolish them, if you need to rebuild them, or if you need to repair them, right? So those are the three things that you would decide what to do with them. And so it just made me think about that when you were talking, Maddie, because there's some things that we need to just completely eliminate. Like we thought it was a good idea, but then we tried it, but it really ended up not being a really good idea, right? Because such and such happened, or this person didn't contribute like I thought they were going to contribute, or I didn't get the bonus that we normally get, or things of that nature. And always giving ourselves grace, because that is what life is. It's constantly changing, right? If it wasn't changing, then life will be so boring. And then repairing some of those things, because I tend to do that in just my everyday life. I focus on like, okay, so how do we make it happen, right? Like solutions, not problems. I say that to my kids all the time. So I'm one of those people that tend to focus more on like, okay, how do we move forward? And I know sometimes it's good to know where it came from, but I like to kind of go fast in that area and just kind of move on to the solution right away. That's just my method. And then rebuilding certain things of, what, like we were doing this, but let's tweak it a little bit, because it needs to be, done a little bit different. Maybe not on the 15th, but the 20th might be a better day. So things like that, I think are good. And yeah, the compromise, Maddie, is good. So yeah, I also love the temperature check concept, not just on the financial piece, but just on everything that we do, with life. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk about, which is completely different, is I'm sure you guys heard about the most recent shooting at the school in Georgia. So it made me think about how do we how do we teach our kids to be safe, right? So like all of our children are in school, so in the event that something were to happen, like do they know what to do? Like I know the school tells them what to do, but have we had those conversations with our children? Have our audience, have you guys had that conversation with your children? And one of the things that I thought about was me being aware of my safety, so that I can then teach that to my kids for themselves as well. So like even in today's world, I tell my kids all the time, like, be aware of your surroundings, because your face is on that cell phone, right? So I wanted to, kind of get some input from you guys, like Maddie, like your children are not in high school anymore, right? They're at a high school, and they're uh, I don't know, I think one of them is not near you or near you, but the concept that you have less and less daily contact with them, to remind them. And even certain things like even being Latino or, just looking different than everybody else, and you get pulled over, like, what do you do? So just safety in general, not just the potential, school shooting. So I just wanted to kind of get your input on that, Maddie.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the being pulled over part because I remember having these conversations with my boys when they were early teenagers, and I have to say it was one of the hardest conversations that I've had with my boys because I talk about this all the time. My kids, my boys, my twins, and my daughter, they look very different. So my daughter is very light skinned, curlier hair. She's more fair skinned. So, and then my boys are really dark skinned. They're really black, like darker, much darker than me. So, having the conversation sometimes, but we're not, they're not black. They are, because the cop is not going to ask, oh, you're black Hispanic or you're black, period. So having the conversation that because you look this way, this may happen, and this is what you have to do. So it was very hard having that conversation, but I still do. I remember my son that's not with me, Misael. He is in Tennessee. Last year, let's see, last semester, early this year, was the first time that he drove himself to school. Like we let him take his car to school, and he drove himself. And I remember him calling me, and he was almost crying. And I'm like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" And he told me that he got stopped by the police. That he got stopped for speeding, and so he experienced that. And I'm like, "But what happened?" He's like, "Oh, I was just listening to music, and I didn't notice, and blah blah blah." Um, so yeah, so he experienced that. Thankfully it was nothing traumatic. I think he was just more scared of telling us that he broke the rules, that he wasn't paying attention and he was speeding. Like I think that was more of it than what the actual interaction. And then we were able to kind of go to court and stuff, and he got the ticket dropped. He was able to, watch the movie or whatever that you do for points and things like that. So we were able to solve it, and it didn't escalate to anything bigger. But I think, him having that experience made those conversations real. Of course, we've had the conversation more than once before. Like I said, when they were younger, it was a little bit different because they probably understood a little bit less. Now it's a more common. They see it on TV all the time. Somebody, got shot by the police, or this happened, or that happened, or blah, blah, blah. So they're more aware of stuff as well. So now it's more like, okay, if this were to happen to me, what do I need to do? How do I need to behave? Like you said, being aware of your surroundings, when you walk into a place, when you are in a place and people walk in, acknowledging people. I work at a bank, and that's one of the things that we do for safety as well. I mean, one, out of courtesy, because, again, as humans, we want to be acknowledged. We want to feel like we matter. So, we greet people the minute they walk in through the door, but also we greet people because if a bank robber comes in to rob the bank, he doesn't want you to look at him. So if I see you and I say welcome, I saw you already. So that's my warning. I already saw you and I know who you are. So they teach us, it's like be aware of who enters the bank. Make sure you look at people. They have like different measuring lines and tapes around the bank, and that's so that if you're walking, like how tall was the person, more or less, you can pinpoint. So it has taught me to be more aware. Sometimes I play tests, with myself, like whenever I say hi to a client, I will say hello, and then I look away and I'm like, okay, what color were their pants, what color was the shirt, that kind of thing. Because again, sometimes we just react in autopilot and we're like, oh hi, welcome, blah blah blah, but we look but we don't look. Does that make sense? So like you're looking, but you're not really looking. So I'm like, okay, did I really look? Okay, what color were the pants? What color was the shirt? And things like that. So again, being aware of your surroundings, of where you're at. If you're walking, like don't be looking down and walking, kind of know where you are in the street and things like that. So I think it's very important, like you said, that we have those conversations of being aware and talk about experiences, because I think, too, if I wouldn't have had that conversation with my son, and he would have gotten stopped by the police, what if he would have reacted differently? What if his him being afraid would have come across as being arrogant or being
In a negative way,
defiant
condescending.
to the police officer. You know what I'm saying? Correct. Correct. When in reality, he was just afraid, but he just doesn't know how to communicate that. But I think, again, because we've had those conversations, before, it was like, yes, sir, no, sir, here you go, here's my information. And, it made it a little bit different. So I think if we would have never had that conversation with him, it may have gone a little bit different. So.
Yeah. What about for you, Nick? I know your son's a little bit younger. So Maddie and I, we have older children, so we may handle it different. And I think these safety issues or school concerns are becoming, the numbers are greater and greater. I think there were a little bit over we're a little bit over 200 in the United States in reference to school shootings. And I know for me personally, there was one of the big ones what happened here, not too far from me. So how, I know I don't even know how much the school system communicates to you, Nikki, as a parent in reference to what if that were to happen. So if you could tell us a little bit from your point of view.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that we're a little more heightened and sense like aware because the majority of the kids right now in his school, even though it's public, are military kids. So I think that a lot of that mindset and be aware of your surroundings is ingrained, but they do have they give you this big packet the moment that you start the school year that talks about like their policies, what they do with the school, and that is helpful. Knock on wood that ever happens here. I think that that's where it's a little scary because I know some kids have sensory issues, and I think that's something that people don't talk about when it comes to these things. That some kids, while you can have them prepare, sensory issues can really make them freeze. And so, what plans go into place, or kids with special needs? Like these are things, discussions that are not even touched on. And so, one of the things that we try to do is that when we go on walks, we just make it a game like, oh, what do you see? What color is that car coming? What's over there? So it's like we're building that self awareness or that situational awareness, which is something that I learned from my husband. And he's always taught me too that you try to, whatever, like you're in public places, always try to sit facing towards the exit so you can see who's coming in and not giving your back to that. So kind of building these ways of thinking and being more aware. And sometimes my husband will say something is like, oh, did you see this? I'm like, no. Ooh, situational awareness, F, like I'll grade myself for it because it's important to be aware. Maddie, as you were talking about the bank situation and always looking at people, that's something too that I know my husband has talked about. Like you look at people in the eye, and even if they look like they could be threatening or they may look suspicious, just look at them in the eye, because you acknowledging them makes you feel less of a target instead of you're like, oh my God, no, I'm not going to look at them. Because I know growing up, we say, no lo veas, don't look at them. Don't look at them. Don't. But it's then you're kind of like doing that, especially as women. So kind of being in that sense of, okay, I'm looking a lot more to my surroundings. I really try to make sure that when we're leading by example, so when we're going on a walk or going to walk to his school, I'm not on my phone and walking. So it's kind of like, okay, what he sees is not what he's going to emulate. And I'm sure once he gets older, he's going to develop his own habits, but trying to be more aware of what's going on. And if anything happens, let's step away and let's not just stand and like, como se dice, rubbernecking, when people are just standing in the middle of chaos and they just want to look to be chismoso. Get out of the way.
Pendenciando.
Yeah, 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 for sure. And it's like, I think that's something that is, I know I can react really well to those things. I've been in situations where I know, like, okay, if I can't help, I'm not a doctor or anything, I need to call for help and move away get out of the way. And sometimes some people are like, what's happening? What's
When
happening?
people don't do
Get
that,
their
they
phone.
like run to it to see what's
I'm
going
like,
on.
yeah, like, no, you can't do that because you're going to get in the way of that person getting help, or you're going to make yourself be in harm's way. So it's like, if you cannot help directly, step away and call for help. Like, that's really and I think it's really hard to put yourself in that situation. Like, I know my mom, she talks about that she can't handle high stress situations. Like, she just panics. So I think that that's one of the things that you have to learn to be self-aware, or even for your kids, if they have those moments, find ways to help them find their calm in those high chaos situations. So I think with little kids, because that's where we're at, it's challenging and it's scary to give them that guidance that you guys can give them, like with older kids, porque ya tienen, like, they can kind of calm themselves a little bit. Granted, if that ever happens, I think in any age you're still gonna, it's a big shock, right? But I think having more of those level-headed conversations is a little easier as they get older. So for us, it's been more of what can we build that becomes natural to him, in terms of like being aware of his surroundings, situational awareness, and speaking up, and not getting nervous or going to the back, because again, it's those things of like, okay, something happens, you run away from danger. We do have these conversations of, hey, if you ever go to the bathroom and you see a strange person, an adult there, don't go in that bathroom, go back to class, tell your teacher. Like, we have these little conversations that help, and we continually foster those conversations. Yeah, and I see what you're saying, Maddie. The smaller they are, the less language and emotional maturity, which is so true. And that's hard because I know he's having some of these more existential questions he starts to ask, but not fully understanding the questions, right? Or the answers that we give him. So it's like we continually try to find ways, and he's like, but why not? Or this and that. And so we're like, how do we explain this? We have to tag team to explain, but I think that it's scary that we have to come to this. But for me, because I grew up in Venezuela, like, I had seen someone get shot while we were driving in a bus, and I'll never forget that. I think I was in ninth grade, so it was like 14, 13, 14, 15.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget that image, but sorry, I knew at that point that, like, the bus driver was screaming to get all the kids down as like the shooting was happening.
Yeah, that's challenging because it's traumatic when situations like that happen. But I
Mhm.
think at the same time, it makes you then, like, for it's like more real. So you're able to tell your son, like, this happens, right? So you really have to be aware.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's something I hope anyone, experiences. But that image, I was reading some of the things that they were saying, that even for kids who've experienced that trauma, that they've had to have some sort of like support for what they've encountered. And I can get it, because I mean, I still remember that, and I remember we had to react quick, tell the kids to cover down, and I just reacted. I didn't freeze or anything, and I think it just has to do with how you're naturally able to handle some of those situations. And it's really scary because I don't think anything can prepare you for that. And
Hmm.
it's just so scary that our children and youth are experiencing these things. But like you ladies have been saying, it's that conversation that we just need to have, porque we don't know what the world's going to look like in the future, and for their generations it's going
Mm-hmm.
to look different too.
Yeah, and as they get older too, is different type of dangers. They're like more expensive dangers, because now they're out here driving and making real adult life decisions, where like in a heartbeat it could turn into chaos. Versus when they're younger, you can kind of foster it a little bit more. They come straight home, there's no girlfriend, there's no, the peer pressure is different. um
Mm-hmm.
and I think I told you guys a couple of months ago, my son is 19, he'll be 20 in October. But I found myself, like, him and I were having a lot of conflict because I was giving him like too much advice, apparently. So I said, you know what, Viviana, start treating him like he's 24, 25, right? And when I did that, I kind of like, I'm like hands off, but still kind of coaching him, but in a different way, because I have to trust him until he shows that I can't trust him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like any other relationship, it could be a friendship, any of those things. But it's hard. But I just think, my faith has gotten greater and greater with God as I've gotten older. But I just have to let it go sometimes because I can't control it.
Mm-hmm.
Control it.
Yeah. I also was gonna say, to wanted to share like with my boys. So they're both 21 now. And when they first went to school, it was so scary because, like you said, I knew we had control because we're paying the rent, we're paying the bills, but they're spending days by themselves. I mean, we were calling them all the time or whatever, but what happens when we hung up the phone? And it was one of those things that, you have to trust them. And, of course, you know how it is. Like now, 2 years later, all these stories are coming out and we get to hear, what like really happened and how they handle certain situations. And I do have to say, that I'm proud of them, for because they were together, they were able to kind of make decisions as a team. So like, for example, they will go to their get-togethers and parties with because they play baseball, so their hangout was the baseball team. So, and you have kids of different ages, so you had from your 25-year-olds, and you had them hanging out with their 18-year-olds, and they would go to these parties. So turns out that they went to a party and they got there, and then they were drinking beer, and one of the
Sorry to interrupt you, but I could just imagine them, like, if something was happening in the party and they probably looked at each other and they thought about, like, what would our parents say, or
mom
the
will kill me.
we've had, you know what I'm saying?
Mom will kill me.
Like, they looked at each other and they were like, let's go.
So that's exactly what happened. So they got to the party and they started drinking beer. Well, one of the twins started drinking faster and more than the other. So the other was like, wait a minute, I need to stop because somebody has to drive us home. So that's what happened. So one of them was kind of like being wild and being part of the bunch, and doing all this stuff, like drinking really fast or whatever. And then the other one was like, wait, no, I have to take a step back because, I have to be able to drive us home or take care of my brother if something happens. And then, if something happens, mom is going to kill us. So, so that sort of thing. And so, yeah, so, of course, like 2 years later, I hear the story. You remember that time and this happened and that happened. And then the minute I took you out of the house, like you threw up in front of the car, and then we went upstairs and you crawl up the stairs and you walk up in the bathroom just with your head in the toilet. And I was like, what in the world? But yeah, so it happened. But I feel like if they didn't have each other, or if we wouldn't have had those open conversations, what if both of them would have gotten drunk? What if both of them would have tried to drive home drunk, and something would have happened and we would have gotten that call from the hospital, like a million things could have happened, So again, sometimes, we trust them and we think, oh, if you would have asked me, I would have been like, no, my kid would never do that. They did, they're kids, they're young, they're 18, 20, they're in college, away from home and doing their own thing. So they do have to do certain things so that they can learn. I'm just glad that we were able to have conversations so that they could make those type of decisions and put themselves in a better position that they would have been if they would have been alone. So
Yeah. I think I would be freaking out more if I had a daughter because I would be so much more overprotective, I think. Um, I don't know, because I guess because too many movie watching or, just stuff that happens out here in the world. And just, I think females tend to be a little bit more vulnerable when it comes to that because then they can get raped and all, this other stuff. But I think God knew exactly that I could not handle daughters. So I only had the two sons because I don't know if I would have the same tranquility that if, having boys, because it's definitely different. And I know even for younger people, Nikte, because I deal with a lot of the younger people, but just making like good sound decisions at school, right? It's part of staying safe. So I have an after school program, and sometimes they make bad decisions. So we always talk about, like I had this one kid, he got in trouble at school just for talking or something like that on the second day of school. So I go into the room and I'm like, okay, raise your hand if you've already gotten in trouble at school and it's only the second day of school. And only one raised his hand, right? But at least he was honest.
I
And
was
I
gonna
said,
say,
oh,
at least he's honest.
yes, yes. So we didn't praise him for being honest. Just his mom and I talked about it. But I think later on together we told him, we always expect him to tell the truth. But we always talk about that, like you gotta make good decisions, and we talk about what you could have done different to avoid it. Because I think sometimes you tell them, oh, you shouldn't have done that, lo regañamos, but then we don't teach them about the alternatives. And I think that is super important. Like you should have done this different next time. And I think too, children love to see us make mistakes. And I think that's a good moment to teach as well. Like, Dag, like I'm not exempt from making mistakes, and I should have done this different. Like I've gotten a lot of speeding tickets, right? When I was younger, because then I learned to use cruise control, and then like my wallet was like, hurting. But my son got a speeding ticket. I think it was last year, and so he really learned his lesson. And his dad was like really upset, but I was like, tell me, like, don't forget about the speeding tickets you've had, when you were younger, because I think sometimes we get lost in how old, what it was like to be 18 and 19 and 20. And I think as parents sometimes we fail our children in that capacity, and it makes them not come to us with situations that they have. So I'm always like, and their dad laughs at me because every time something happens, I'm like, yeah, remember you did this when you were 20, And then he's like, you have, what is it? Oh, he tells me you have like a memory of an elephant. Like you remember what you want to remember. But yeah, I think that's important to just let them know that we're humans just like them, and that safety issue could happen anywhere. Like I know it could happen in a parking lot. Making sure things are lit when you go out at nighttime. And my biggest thing is that cell phone, because they're walking. Like I don't allow my kids from my job, like as soon as I see that, even if I see a kid outside, I'm like, you can't walk and be on your phone at the same time, right? And I make it a joke because I'm like, if you bump into something, like I'm gonna laugh at you, right? But it's really like a safety issue because they're like that whole bank scenario you told us. Like youth today would fail the test every single time because they're not paying attention. And even for me, I don't really pay attention, but I'm becoming more aware, because you never think it's going to happen to you until it happens.
Yeah, my daughter always tells me, "Oh, you think you know it all." I was like, "I don't know it all, but I know more than you
Yeah,
because I've been alive longer and I've been through more situations. So I don't know it all, but I know more than you." I always say that because,
yeah. And
kids.
she'll be saying the same thing when she's your age to her kids, to her daughter.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. But yeah, like that was it. I just wanted to like just to make sure that we're having those conversations, not just with our own children, but even if we come in contact with somebody else's children.
Mhm,
um, there's a lot of children that don't have parents, um, or role models as parents.
mhm.
Sometimes, like just this week, I encountered two children whose parents passed away over the summertime. I had not seen them.
Sad.
And then another young lady, I don't know what her situation is, but she's been passed around between family members because her parents aren't in the picture. So sometimes children like that need additional guidance. Um,
Mhm,
just to say, hey, I can call Nikte, if I have a situation, or Maddie, because I think they don't have, they really shut down, and
mhm.
they keep that stuff. They internalize everything, and then next thing you know, they're harming themselves or they're harming somebody else,
Mm,
physically or emotionally.
same.
Because we always talk about how, give yourself some grace, and it happens at all ages. There's a lot of
Mhm,
insecurities happening that's created by the adults that are doing this to the children, and
mhm,
like they don't even realize the consequences of the type of youth these young people are going to become as adults. It's sad sometimes.
mhm.
Some people are
Yeah.
doing a great job, but some of it is horrible.
Oh my. I think too, um, like for me, I think it's a little more relevant because I have little ones, but teaching your children to, if they see kids playing alone or being mocked or all those things, to be like, hey, are you okay? Hey, let's play together, kind of being that person, because it does, it's very sad to see those situations too, or I've even seen where there's like 3, 4 year olds playing by themselves out here in the streets. And like, I could not do that, and you don't know the situation at home. But I think that if we can teach our children to be more empathetic, they can make an impact in those children that, like you were saying, that they've been passed around. They have these really tough stories, and usually that's what tends to happen when these kids are faced, like throughout their lives, that constant rejection. It turns out to a negative sometimes output, and sometimes they're able to see it through. But if that one person can have an impact, it can really help them out if they're having a really bad day, or they can feel like they're not alone. Just having that support. Hey, are you alone? Are you okay? And I do love that my son is like, if some of his friends fall down or someone in his class, he's like, are you okay? Like that, checking on others too
Hmm.
starts from a young age.
That
Hmm.
is also a way of making them be aware, because not only
Mhm,
are they aware of whatever's happening physically, but they're aware of the emotional impact that certain situations have on other people. Because when you're checking in on somebody because they're quiet, you know that physically they're fine, but something is happening emotionally, so you're teaching them how to recognize those emotional cues as well. So
mhm. I love that. Good point, Maddie.
I just wanted to acknowledge, I didn't realize Lily had made a comment. She said, tu cuerpo y mente te dan señales para pedir ayuda y sentirse acompañada.
Mhm.
Y Nancy dice, buenas tardes, desde Colombia.
Buenas tardes.
hi Lily, hi Nancy, gracias.
Yeah. Um, Dang, I was gonna say something, but Nancy threw me off. I forgot. But yeah, I just think all of that is important to have those conversations. It's what Maddie says all the time: just educate yourself and don't be afraid to have the conversations. Because even sometimes as a parent, you can initiate that conversation by saying, like, hey, do you know what such and such is? Like, let's say vaping. Do you know what vaping is?
Mm,
And then they can teach you what it actually is. Because like with that conversation about the like I tell my kids all the time, I don't like yo mama jokes, right? And I
mm,
always tell them I don't like the yo mama jokes because somebody's mom may be not alive,
mm,
right? And then you're
mm,
tapping into people's feelings. And it's so
mm,
funny you mentioned empathy, because I always mention empathy. I was like, you don't know what people's situations are, and I help them define the word empathy, right? Like, just don't say it. Like, you really have to know what that word means. And then
Mhm.
as we become more empathetic, then we become more compassionate and less hurtful to people.
Yeah, it's language. We need to, my daughter always calls me uptight, that I'm very uptight and that I try to be perfect. And it was funny because my therapist asked me the other day, she's like, I'm sorry, Maddie, but you are so put together. What are you doing here? Like literally, she told, because I'm like, and I'm sitting, and I realize I'm sitting there with my legs crossed and kind of having the conversation, sitting upright, and she's like, this is your time to let go, to let loose. If this is a facade, you have, and I'm like, no, this is me. I'm the kind of person that I feel like there's a time and a place for everything. So, you're talking about language. I
I
tell my
think your daughter's right.
I tell my kids all the time, you can't talk the same way everywhere you go. There's a time and a place for everything. So, I make a joke of it in my poetry. I don't curse in my poetry. You want to hear me cursing? Come to my house. You will hear all of them because I know all of them and I use them. I know how to use them too. But I don't, just because I choose not to curse in public or in front of people or in my work, doesn't mean that I don't do it. But like I said, there's a time and a place for everything. Because if I go do poems out of school, I have to censor my poems because I have 10 F-bombs in there. Guess who's not? Guess who doesn't need to edit their poems? Because I don't put them in my poems. So, and that's just me. That's just a choice that I make. So sometimes just because I go somewhere and I don't act hood doesn't mean that I can be hood if I have to. You know what I'm saying? So I always tell the kids there's a
Yeah, you're
time.
Dominican.
Listen.
And you live there.
Como decimos nosotros, me sacan el apellido. Y entonces me conocen. So, but again, you can't do that all the time, everywhere you're at or wherever you're at, So that's kind of like one of the arguments that I have with this generation, because they think, oh, I'm just me and I'm going to be me. Okay, you can be you, but at this time you're at work, you're in front of people, you're in front of your elders. And at the end of the day, I'm still your mother. Just because, you feel comfortable talking to me doesn't mean that you can say whatever comes out of your mouth whenever, because I'm still your mother. But.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. So, ladies, our hour is up. So we're ready for your poem, tu poema, Maddie.
Okay, so I'm just today I'm just gonna read from my book.
Which
So
you could find on Amazon.
I had this weekend I had the opportunity to be part of an event. It was an event for mothers, and it was all kind of women in there, and there were professionals and psychologists and social workers or whatever, and we were all talking about different things that mothers face, and it was just beautiful to kind of hear people's different situations and situations that people are going through, and kind of makes you feel again that you're not alone. So I got the opportunity to kind of read a little bit from my book, and just kind of want to share one of the poems from the book. It is a poem that I have read before, but I think because of what we're talking about today, we just got to remind ourselves sometimes, and I think about what I would say to young Maddie or little Maddie, and that's what this poem is. So this is an open letter to my 14-year-old self. I would like to start by saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did not write to you sooner, that I didn't find the courage to unmask the fake behind your smile, expose the sadness underneath your teenage discrepancies, or at least mitigate the pain that at this very moment suffocates the spirit that surrounds you. Breathe. Life is like a racetrack in which negative and positive will always compete, sometimes collide. And when one is getting ready to win, the other will surprise you. There will be highs and there will be lows, big accomplishments and low blows that will want to make you abandon all that you have known. But when you have cried that one last tear, so you thought, you will discover what it feels like to hurt. You will try to carve the pain of your flesh, creating openings in the hopes that you can bleed it away. But instead, your scars will serve as a reminder of your strength, of all you had to endure and never want to go through again. You will punish yourself. Equate the hunger in your heart with the need to physically starve. In moments of desperation, pile massive amounts of food on top of the feelings and the shame you're always trying to hide, filling you up inside. It will all come out, and yes, it will hurt. Not everyone will like you, but the worst pain will come from hating yourself. Looking in the mirror will trigger words that feel more like bullets you aim at your head. You will want to die, but instead, let it hurt. You will be surrounded by doubt, but you will do all the things you always wanted to do. Things that don't get done by people with bodies that look like you, but you will conquer the hurt. You will create life. Your little ones will look up to you for guidance, and while teaching them, you will learn. Yes, you will learn that every masterpiece starts out as a rough draft. That the Creator has molded you with His very own hands as His vision of perfect, because you are and you will be perfect. Not in the sense that there will be no imperfections, but that you will learn that everything that makes you different is what sets you apart from the rest. You will change your outer appearance over and over again in the hopes of a rebirth, until you learn that changing the wrapper on a package does not change the content inside. Inside will be the only constant in your life, and regardless of what you look like, how you feel about yourself will determine the size of the beautiful smile that makes you shine. You will learn to smile even when you cry. I'm sorry that I didn't reach out to you sooner, but I want you to know that you will be beautiful because you have been beautiful all along.
Thank you, Maddie. That's good. You should read that poem to your daughter today.
Yeah, that is beautiful.
And what?
That was beautiful. Thank you.
But I hope you ladies have an amazing week. Do something special for yourself. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to even be a purchase. Just give yourself some attention in some capacity. Thank you, Mark, for everything that you do. Mark is our producer. He's what makes everything happen, the sound, the view, the everything. So thank you, Mark. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys next Sunday at 4 o'clock.
Ciao. Gracias. Ciao, mujeres.
Ciao, Nan.
If you're watching this with your friends, you'll probably make a joke.
Because you know what you feel on the inside
isn't what you want people to know.
If you have to pretend to be happy,
find someone you trust and tell them.
If you get mad at things and you don't know why, or have thoughts about hurting yourself,
find someone you trust and tell them.
You are never alone when you share.
Seriously, people care about you.
It's okay to not understand what you're feeling.
And it's easy to think that you're all alone.
But you don't have to be.
You're never alone when you share.
Don't be ashamed to tell someone you trust what you're feeling.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Find someone you trust and tell them.
Tell a parent.
Tell a teacher. Tell a brother or sister.
Or just tell a friend.
You haven't done anything wrong.
Talk to someone.
Talk to someone.
It's how things get better.
Are just so impressed with them. Like I said, we've been with them for years. I will recommend and refer anyone to them. We stand by A+ Academics. They're the best.
A+ tutorial really did help me with all my grades. They all went up when I came to this place. And I would say I recommend this school to everyone.
So it's a really good environment to be in, especially for me because it makes me look up to my parents.
If you have students that need academic help, A+ Academics is the place to be. A+ Academics, what a great place to go for academics.
It's just a really great place to learn.